3 in the afternoon, the 13th of June, 1946. Ciampino Airport, 14 kilometers south of Rome. A 42-year-old man in a dark suit crosses the tarmac toward a military transport plane. Behind him, in the courtyard of the Quirinal Palace, the household staff have already wept. The silver has been covered, the curtains drawn. The man walking toward the aircraft is Umberto II, King of Italy for exactly 34 days, and the last person to hold that title. A carabiniere stationed at the edge of the runway seizes his hand. "Your Majesty, we will never forget you." 3 days earlier, on the 10th of June, Umberto had summoned his minister Falcone Lucifero to the palace and given him a sealed leather case. And inside were the crown jewels of Italy, 26 pieces containing 6,732 diamonds, over 2,000 pearls, sapphires, emeralds and rubies. Lucifero carried the case to the Bank of Italy headquarters on Via Nazionale and deposited it in a basement vault. With it, Umberto left a handwritten note. The jewels should go, he wrote, a chi di diritto, to those who have the right. That vault has been opened once in nearly 80 years. The note is still inside. The jewels have never been appraised. The family has never touched them again. His advisors had urged him to fly south to Naples, where the monarchy had won by margins exceeding 80%. They told him the army would follow. He could proclaim a rival government and split the country in half. His response was 6 words that would define everything the House of Savoy became after power. "My house united Italy. I will not divide it." His final official statement, issued from the tarmac, called the referendum result a coup d'état orchestrated by the Council of Ministers. He refused to accept the Republic. Then he boarded the plane. It flew to Lisbon. He would never see Italy again. Behind him, he left a dynasty that had held power in some form for 943 years, a constitution that would ban his male descendants from Italian soil, a father who had signed the racial laws and fled Rome in the back of a military convoy, 4 children under the age of 12, a wife who would leave him within months of arriving in Portugal, and a sealed case of diamonds that 3 generations of his family would spend the next 8 decades trying to recover. The son he left behind would shoot a teenager on a yacht and stand trial for corruption. The grandson he never met would win Dancing with the Stars and sell pasta from a food truck in Los Angeles. The great-granddaughter he could not have imagined would be named heir to a throne that no longer exists. The House of Savoy ruled Italy for 85 years. This is what happened to the people inside it when the kingdom ended. The family that lost Italy in 1946 had been accumulating it for nearly a millennium. Around the year 1003, to a knight of uncertain Burgundian origin named Humber the White-Handed secured the county of Savoy in the Western Alps, a strip of territory straddling what is now southeastern France and northwestern Italy. His title was modest, his location was not. The Savoys controlled the Alpine passes that connected the Italian peninsula to the rest of Europe, and for 4 centuries they leveraged that geography through marriage, war, and the particular Savoyard talent for choosing the winning side at the last possible moment. In 1416, Amadeus VIII became the first Duke of Savoy. In 1562, Emmanuel Philibert moved the capital from Chambéry across the mountains to Turin, pivoting the dynasty's centre of gravity permanently toward Italy. The breakthrough came in 1713, and when Victor Amadeus II received the Kingdom of Sicily at the Treaty of Utrecht, exchanged 7 years later for the Kingdom of Sardinia, and with it the Savoy's first royal crown. A county had become a duchy. A duchy had become a kingdom. The kingdom would become an empire. By the middle of the 19th century, the Kingdom of Sardinia-Piedmont was the only major Italian state not controlled by Austria, France, or the Pope. Under Victor Emanuel II and his Prime Minister Count Cavour, with the military force of Giuseppe Garibaldi's Expedition of the Thousand, the Savoys unified the Italian peninsula from Sicily to the Alps. On the 17th of March 1861, the Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed. Victor Emanuel II became its first king and earned the title Padre della Patria, Father of the Fatherland. Rome fell in 1870. It became the capital in 1871. What the Savoys possessed by the early 20th century was not merely a throne, but the physical infrastructure of an entire nation rebranded as a family estate. The Quirinal Palace in Rome, 110,500 square meters, 1,200 rooms, 20 times larger than the White House, served as the royal residence. The Royal Palace of Turin, the dynasty's original seat of power, held the state apartments, the royal armoury, and the chapel of the Holy Shroud. The Palace of Venaria Reale, 17 kilometres northwest of Turin, sprawled across 80,000 square metres of galleries, gardens and ceremonial halls, the Versailles of Piedmont. The Stupinigi hunting lodge, designed by Filippo Juvara, covered 31,000 square metres. The Palazzo Carignano, birthplace of Victor Emanuel II, the Castle of Rivoli, the Castle of Moncalieri, the Castle of Racconigi, where the last heir to the throne was born. In total, 22 Savoy residences in Piedmont alone would later be collectively designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997. 4 kings ruled Italy across those 85 years. Victor Emanuel II, the unifier, died on the 9th of January 1878 and was buried in the Pantheon in Rome. His son Umberto I reigned for 22 years until an anarchist bullet ended him. His grandson Victor Emanuel III sat on the throne for 46 years, longer than any other Italian king, and made the 2 decisions that destroyed everything. His great-grandson, Umberto II, reigned for 34 days and left from a runway at Ciampino with 6 words and a sealed case of diamonds. The dynasty that built those palaces, collected those jewels, and unified those 26 million people into a single nation had held power in some form since the year 1003, 943 years, and the Republic erased it in a single paragraph of constitutional law. Victor Emanuel III became king on the 29th of July 1900, the day his father Umberto I was shot 3 times by Gaetano Bresci, an Italian-American anarchist and silk weaver from Paterson, New Jersey, who had travelled back across the Atlantic specifically to kill him. Bresci fired at close range in Monza as the king's open carriage left a gymnastics competition. And Umberto I was 56 years old. His assassin's stated motive was the king's decision to decorate General Fiorenzo Bava Beccaris, who in 1898 had ordered artillery turned on bread price protesters in Milan, killing between 82 and 400 civilians. Bresci told the court he had not killed Umberto, he had killed a principal. The new king stood 5 feet tall. He was shy, bookish, physically slight, and pathologically cautious in every decision except the ones that mattered most. He was an obsessive numismatist who assembled a coin collection of approximately 100,000 specimens, eventually donated to the Italian state. He married Princess Elena of Montenegro in 1900. They had 5 children. For 2 decades he governed competently, if unspectacularly, but leading Italy through the First World War on the Allied side. Then came the 28th of October, 1922. Benito Mussolini's Black Shirts launched the March on Rome. Prime Minister Luigi Facta presented Victor Emanuel with a decree of martial law that would have allowed the army to disperse the marchers. The king refused to sign it. On the 29th, he appointed Mussolini prime minister. The army could have defended Rome. The king chose not to test that proposition. Over the next 21 years, he acquiesced to the systematic destruction of parliamentary democracy, accepted the titles Emperor of Ethiopia in 1936 and King of Albania in 1939, and told a foreign diplomat that Mussolini was the most satisfactory premier he had ever had. The decision that would follow the dynasty into exile and stain it permanently came on the 17th of November, 1938. Victor Emanuel III signed Royal Decree No. 1728, the Provvedimenti per la difesa della razza, measures for the defense of the race. The decree banned marriages between Jewish and non-Jewish Italians. It expelled Jewish students from schools and universities. It barred Jews from government employment, military service, and most professions. It confiscated Jewish-owned businesses exceeding a specified size. It revoked the Italian citizenship of foreign-born Jews. The king signed it. Approximately 8,000 Italian Jews were subsequently deported to Nazi death camps. The majority did not return. On the 8th of September, 1943, that Italy's secret armistice with the Allies was broadcast over radio. The following morning, Victor Emanuel III made his final catastrophic decision. He fled Rome southward with Marshal Pietro Badoglio, travelling by motorcade through Pescara to Brindisi in Allied-controlled southern Italy. No orders were issued to the Italian armed forces. The Germans, prepared for exactly this collapse, moved immediately. Over 600,000 Italian soldiers were disarmed, interned, and in many cases deported to forced labour camps. The king, who had refused to defend Rome against the Blackshirts in 1922, refused to defend it against the Wehrmacht in 1943. The pattern held. He transferred his powers to his son Umberto on the 5th of June 1944, naming him Lieutenant General of the realm. On the 9th of May 1946, 3 weeks before the referendum that would decide the monarchy's fate, Victor Emanuel formally abdicated, hoping that removing himself from the equation might save the institution. It did not. The referendum was held on the 2nd of June 1946. It was the first national election in Italian history in which women could vote. 24,900,000 Italians cast ballots, a turnout of 89.08%. The results: 12,718,641 votes for the Republic, 10,718,502 for the monarchy, 54.3% to 45.7%. The Republic won by just under 2 million votes. The geographic fracture was absolute. Now, the industrialised north, Milan, Turin, Genoa, the cities that had sheltered the partisan resistance, voted approximately 66% for the Republic. The rural south voted approximately 64% for the monarchy, with parts of Campania exceeding 80% for the crown. In Naples, violent monarchist protests erupted on the 8th of June. 4 people were killed. At least 35 were wounded. Carabinieri fired into crowds waving the royal standard. Victor Emanuel III had already left. He sailed from Naples to Alexandria, Egypt, where he lived in a modest villa with Queen Elena. He died on the 28th of December, 1947, at the age of 78. His remains stayed in Egypt for 70 years. Though they were repatriated to the sanctuary of Vecco near Cuneo only on the 17th of December, 2017. A transfer that drew formal protests from Jewish organisations and anti-fascist groups across Italy. The family had requested the Pantheon beside Victor Emanuel II, the king who had unified the nation. The Republic said no. The 13th transitional provision of the Italian constitution was approved by the Constituent Assembly on the 22nd of December, 1947. It took effect on the 1st of January 1948. It contained 3 paragraphs. Together, they constituted the most complete legal erasure of a ruling family in modern European history. Paragraph 1 denied all members and descendants of the House of Savoy the right to vote or hold any public office within the Italian Republic. Paragraph 2 forbade the former kings of the House of Savoy, their spouses, and their male descendants from entering or residing on Italian territory, not temporarily, not conditionally, permanently. Paragraph 3 confiscated all property belonging to the former kings and their descendants on Italian soil, and declared any transfers of such property made after the 2nd of June 1946 null and void. Every palace, every estate, every painting, every hectare of land became the property of the Republic. The vote was 453 in favour, 62 against. The provision drew no distinction between those who had collaborated with fascism and those who had not. It drew no distinction between the king who had signed the racial laws and the infant granddaughters who had been carried out of Italy in their mother's arms. The punishment was biological. If the blood was Savoy and the body was male, the border was closed. Female descendants were not banned. They could enter Italy, reside in Italy, and vote. The asymmetry was deliberate. The Constituent Assembly considered female members of the dynasty insufficiently dangerous to the Republic's stability. The males who carried the dynastic claim were the threat, so the males were exiled. No compensation was offered, no timeline for review was set, no appeal mechanism was created. The provision was embedded in the transitional articles of the Constitution itself. Not an ordinary law that could be repealed by simple majority, but a constitutional provision requiring the supermajority procedures of Article 138 to amend. What the Republic confiscated in that single provision was the accumulated physical patrimony of 943 years. The Quirinal Palace became the residence of the President of the Republic. The Royal Palace of Turin became a museum and gallery complex. The Palace of Venaria Real fell into disrepair for decades before an 8-year restoration costing $284 million returned it to public use in 2007. The Stupinigi Hunting Lodge became a furniture museum. The Castle of Rivoli became a contemporary art museum. The Palazzo Carignano, where Victor Emanuel II had been born and where the first Italian parliament had sat, became a museum of the Risorgimento. 22 Savoy residences in Piedmont were collectively inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1997, drawing millions of visitors annually to properties whose former owners were constitutionally forbidden from setting foot inside them. The family that had built those palaces, furnished those rooms, and hung those paintings was now barred from the country those palaces stood in. The wealthiest dynastic house in Italian history received nothing. No stipend, no transitional allowance, no one-way ticket with £1,000 and a deadline as the Ottomans had received from the Turkish Republic in 1924. The Savoys received a paragraph of constitutional text and the instruction to leave. Of all the royal exiles in history, the Habsburgs stripped of their Austrian estates in 1919, the Ottomans expelled from Turkey in 1924, the Romanovs murdered in a basement in Yekaterinburg. Which dynasty do you think lost the most after losing power? Tell me in the comments. Umberto II arrived in Cascais on the Portuguese Riviera west of Lisbon and settled into Villa Italia, a seaside property built for him by Italian monarchist sympathisers overlooking the Atlantic. He attended Mass every morning. He walked the beach in the afternoon. He received visitors from the diminishing circle of European royalty, who still treated deposed kings as colleagues rather than curiosities. He maintained the Savoyard historical archives he had carried into exile. He issued New Year's messages to the Italian people every year for 37 years. each one ending with a variation of the same promise. Whatever fate awaited the country, it could always count on him as one of its devoted sons. He never abdicated. He never renounced the claim. He never accepted the Republic as legitimate. And he never set foot on Italian soil again. His wife left almost immediately. Queen Marie-Josée, born a Princess of Belgium in 1906, a concert-level pianist, a published historian, a woman who had secretly made contact with Allied diplomats during the war in an attempt to negotiate Italy's exit from the Axis, separated from Umberto within months of arriving in Portugal. She moved to Merling, a small estate near Geneva, Switzerland. When asked about the marriage in later years, she was precise. On n'a jamais été heureux. We were never happy. And she described the House of Savoy as not a family, it's a frigidaire. They never divorced. Both were devout Catholics. They simply lived on opposite ends of Europe for the next 4 decades, united by a surname and separated by everything else. Marie-Josée devoted her exile to historical scholarship, authored books on the House of Savoy, established an International Music Composition Prize, and received the French Legion of Honour. She died of lung cancer on the 27th of January 2001, at the age of 94, in a clinic near Geneva. Victor Emanuel III, the king whose decisions had produced the exile, did not survive it long. He died in Alexandria, Egypt, on the 28th of December 1947, less than 2 years after leaving Italy at the age of 78. His wife Queen Elena died in Montpellier, France, on the 28th of November 1952. Their remains stayed outside Italy for 7 decades, their 4 granddaughters scattered across continents. Princess Maria Pia, the eldest, born in 1934 in Naples, worked as a model for Vogue and a journalist. Married Prince Alexander of Yugoslavia in 1955, divorced him in 1967, and later married Prince Michel of Bourbon-Parma in 2003. Princess Maria Gabriella, born in 1940 in Naples, was reportedly courted by the Shah of Iran. Pope John XXIII allegedly intervened to prevent the match, and later by the future King Juan Carlos of Spain. Neither materialized. She became a historian of the dynasty and founded the King Umberto II Foundation in Lausanne. Young Princess Maria Beatrice, born in 1943, led the most fractured life of the 4. Her family blocked her marriage to an Italian actor by claiming she was mentally unfit. Her husband, Luis Reina Corvalan Zaidillan, was found murdered in their villa in Cuernavaca, Mexico in 1999. Her son Rafael died at 23 in Boston in 1994. The only son, Vittorio Emanuele, was 9 years old when the plane left Ciampino. He grew up in Switzerland with his mother, became a financial consultant and arms dealer, developed connections to the Shah of Iran and to Italy's P2 Masonic Lodge. His name appeared on the membership list when the lodge was exposed in 1981. On the night of the 17th of August 1978, on the island of Cavallo off Corsica, Sa'i grabbed an M1 carbine after an altercation involving his son's rubber dinghy. He fired 2 shots. One passed through a boat's cabin wall and struck Dirk Hamer, a 19-year-old German tourist sleeping below deck, in the leg. Hamer underwent 19 surgeries over nearly 4 months. He died on the 7th of December 1978. The Paris Court of Assizes acquitted Vittorio Emanuele of manslaughter in November 1991, citing inconclusive ballistic evidence, and convicted him of illegal weapons possession with a 6-month suspended sentence. Years later, while jailed on unrelated charges, wiretaps captured him apparently boasting about the incident. Umberto II watched all of this from Cascais, and he had opposed his son's marriage to Marina Ricolfi Doria, a Swiss water-skiing champion, which Vittorio Emanuele contracted secretly in Las Vegas on the 11th of January 1970, without the paternal consent required by Savoyard house law. Umberto warned him explicitly. Marriage without consent would cost him his dynastic rights. Succession would pass to his nephew, Amedeo, the Duke of Aosta. The warning was ignored. The marriage proceeded. The rupture between father and son became the fault line that would split the dynasty permanently. Umberto was diagnosed with bone cancer around the age of 60. President Sandro Pertini, a socialist and former partisan who had fought against everything the monarchy represented, wanted the Italian parliament to allow the dying king to come home. The measure never reached a vote. Now Umberto II died in Geneva on the 18th of March 1983 at the age of 78. His reported last word was, "Italy." No representative of the Italian government attended his funeral. He was buried at Hautecombe Abbey in Savoy, France, the traditional resting place of the House of Savoy for centuries on the shore of Lac du Bourget. In his will, he bequeathed the Holy Shroud of Turin, owned by the Savoys since 1453, to Pope John Paul II and his successors. He had said once from exile, "To see my Rome, my Naples, my Turin, once again would be the best dream of my life." He never did. 3 responses to exile emerged from the generation that followed Umberto II, and each one proved something different about what a dynasty becomes when the throne disappears. Umberto II himself had chosen dignity through refusal. He refused to divide the country. He refused to accept the Republic. He refused to abdicate. He refused to stop writing those New Year's messages year after year to a nation that did not write back. 37 years in the same villa in Cascais, attending the same church, walking the same stretch of coastline, maintaining the protocols of a court that governed nothing. The discipline of it was absolute. The futility of it was equally absolute. He died in a Geneva hospital room, not in the Quirinal, not in the Pantheon beside his grandfather. 78 years old, buried in France. His country sent no one. His son Vittorio Emanuele chose a different path, return, and it destroyed what remained of the family's reputation. On the 23rd of October 2002, the Italian Parliament enacted Constitutional Law No. 1, repealing the first 2 paragraphs of the 13th transitional provision. The Senate voted 235 to 19. The ban on male Savoy descendants entering Italy was lifted, effective the 10th of November. Paragraph 3, the property confiscation, was left untouched. The palaces, the estates, the paintings, everything stayed with the Republic. The conditions of return were specific. Vittorio Emanuele and his son Emanuele Filiberto were required to sign a public letter expressing loyalty to the Italian constitution, renouncing all claims to the throne and recognizing the Republic as Italy's sole legitimate government. Vittorio Emanuele also withdrew his pending case at the European Court of Human Rights. On the 23rd of December, from 2002, 56 years after his father had left from Ciampino, Vittorio Emanuele, his wife Marina, and his son Emanuele Filiberto returned to Italian soil and were received by Pope John Paul II at the Vatican for a 20-minute audience. The homecoming lasted approximately 3 years before it became a criminal proceeding. In 2003, Vittorio Emanuele told an interviewer that the 1938 racial laws were not that terrible. He published a retraction in Corriere della Sera in 2005, but the damage was done. A visit to Naples in 2003 drew hundreds of hostile demonstrators. The prince who had been exiled as a 9-year-old was now a 70-year-old man who could not read the country he had spent a lifetime trying to re-enter. On the 16th of June 2006, Italian police arrested Vittorio Emanuele at his residence in Varenna on Lake Como and transferred him to a prison in Potenza. The charges were criminal association, corruption and exploitation of prostitution, all connected to the Casino di Campione, an Italian gambling house in the exclave of Campione d'Italia on the Swiss border. Prosecutors alleged he had helped procure Eastern European women for casino clients and facilitated the installation of rigged slot machines. While incarcerated, wiretaps captured him making obscene slurs against Sardinians, prompting the town of Bitti in Sardinia to formally declare itself a Savoy-free zone. He was acquitted of all major charges by 2010. The acquittals did not matter. The wiretaps had been published, and the Netflix documentary came next, a 3-part series called The King Who Never Was, released in 2023, which reconstructed the Dirk Hammer shooting in forensic detail. The image of the dynasty's heir was now fixed. A man who had shot a teenager on a yacht, boasted about it in a jail cell, stood trial for procuring prostitutes, and insulted the people of one of Italy's poorest regions, while claiming to represent a family that had once governed them. Vittorio Emanuele spent his final years quietly in Geneva. He died on the 3rd of February 2024 at the age of 86. His funeral was held at Turin Cathedral on the 10th of February. Queen Sophia of Spain attended. Prince Albert of Monaco attended. So did Prince Aimone. Duke of Aosta, the man whose branch of the family had spent 2 decades claiming that Vittorio Emanuele had no right to lead the dynasty in the first place. The 2 rivals' families were photographed together, Aimone helping carry the coffin. Personal reconciliation at a funeral. The institutional question, who leads the House of Savoy, remained unanswered. The third response to exile belonged to the grandson, Umberto II, never met. Emanuele Filiberto was born in Geneva on the 22nd of June, 1972. 26 years into exile in a country that was not Italy, to parents whose marriage his grandfather considered illegitimate. He grew up speaking French, earned a degree in political science from the University of Geneva, and went into finance. And he worked as a hedge fund manager at Republic National Bank of New York and at Sisbank in Switzerland. He created the Altin Fund, reportedly the first hedge fund listed on the Zurich Stock Exchange. Then he pivoted into something no member of the House of Savoy had ever attempted: popular entertainment. In 2009, he entered the 5th season of Italy's Ballando con le Stelle, Dancing with the Stars, and won, receiving over 1.5 million viewer votes. He competed at the Sanremo Music Festival in 2010. He hosted television programs. He became, for a period, one of the most recognizable faces in Italian popular culture, not as a prince, but as a contestant. In Los Angeles, he launched Prince of Venice, and a gourmet fresh pasta food truck operating with the first fresh pasta machine ever installed in a commercial food vehicle. Flour from Piedmont, truffles from Campobasso. The great-grandson of Victor Emanuel III, the man who had signed the racial laws and fled Rome, was serving cacio e pepe from a truck window on Abbot Kinney Boulevard in Venice Beach. The operation expanded to a fast-casual restaurant in Westwood. He married French actress Clotilde Courreau on the 25th of September 2003 at the Basilica of Santa Maria degli Angeli in Rome. Prince Albert of Monaco served as best man. Valentino designed the dress. 1,200 guests attended. They had 2 daughters, Vittoria, born on the 28th of December 2003, and Luisa, born on the 16th of August 2006. In March 2025, Emanuele Filiberto confirmed the couple had been separated since 2021. His most recent venture is The Royaland Company, a royalty-themed video game developed in collaboration with 8 former European royal families. The company began trading on the OTCQB venture market on November 2024. He also owns 3 football clubs in Campania and has a reality competition series called Becoming Royals in development. In June 2023, he announced his intention to eventually cede his dynastic claim to his daughter Vittoria, which would mark the first female succession in over 1,000 years of Savoy history. His late father had issued a decree in 2019 abolishing Salic law within the House of Savoy, enabling precisely this. Emanuele Filiberto has been direct about what the claim means in practice. Today, Italy is a republic. There's no need to restore a monarchy. You can do a lot of good things without this. The dynasty that could not hold Italy together could not hold itself together either. The succession dispute that divides the House of Savoy is rooted in a marriage that took place in Las Vegas on the 11th of January 1970, and in a decree issued by a Savoyard king nearly 2 centuries earlier. On the 13th of September 1780, Victor Amadeus III signed a royal patent requiring all members of the House of Savoy to obtain the reigning sovereign's consent before marrying. Marriage without consent carried a specific penalty: forfeiture of dynastic rights for the offending member and all their descendants. And Vittorio Emanuele married Marina Ricolfi Doria without his father's consent. Umberto II had refused it. He considered the match beneath the dynasty. Marina was a commoner, a Swiss water-skiing champion, not a member of a reigning or formerly reigning house. The civil ceremony in Las Vegas was followed by a religious ceremony in Tehran on the 7th of October 1971, hosted by the Shah of Iran. Umberto II did not attend either ceremony. The consequences were laid out in a letter Umberto wrote to his son, which he also communicated to the broader family. If Vittorio Emanuele married without consent, succession would pass to my nephew Amadeo, the Duke of Aosta. Vittorio Emanuele married anyway. Our Umberto II spent the remaining 13 years of his life in an ambiguous position, softening enough to grant the title Prince of Venice to his grandson Emanuele Filiberto in 1972, and eventually styling Marina as Her Royal Highness, but never issuing a formal document rescinding the warning about dynastic forfeiture. That ambiguity became a fault line the moment Umberto died in 1983. Vittorio Emanuele declared himself head of the Royal House of Savoy. No one formally challenged him for 23 years. Then came the 16th of June 2006, the day Italian police arrested Vittorio Emanuele for corruption and prostitution charges connected to the Casino di Campione. 3 weeks later, on the 7th of July, Prince Amadeo, 5th Duke of Aosta, issued a formal declaration. He was the legitimate head of the Royal House of Savoy. Vittorio Emanuele's marriage had been contracted without consent. The house law of 1780 was clear. The dynasty's leadership had passed to the Aosta branch at the moment of that marriage, 36 years earlier. The Aosta branch of the House of Savoy descends from Amadeo, 1st Duke of Aosta, the second son of Victor Emanuel II. It has maintained an unbroken male line and a record of marriages contracted entirely within the rules of Savoyard house law. Prince Amadeo, the 5th Duke, was born in 1943 in Florence. He served in the Italian Navy, worked in agriculture and business, and lived most of his life in Italy. The Aosta branch being a cadet line rather than direct descendants of the last king, that had not been specifically targeted by the exile provision in the same way. He claimed the headship quietly for 15 years before dying of cardiac arrest following routine surgery in Arezzo on the 1st of June 2021 at the age of 77. His son, Prince Aimone, now the 6th Duke of Aosta, is a different species of Savoy entirely. Born on the 13th of October 1967, he served in Italy's elite naval special forces, the Compsabin. He earned a degree from Bocconi University in Milan. He built a 25-year career at Pirelli, rising to chief executive of their Russia and Nordic operations, before returning to Milan in 2023 as senior vice president for institutional and regulatory affairs. and he married Princess Olga of Greece in 2 ceremonies in 2008, a civil ceremony in Moscow and a religious ceremony on the Greek island of Patmos. They have 3 children: Umberto, born in 2009, Amadeo, born in 2011, and Isabella, born in 2012. The 2 boys, Umberto and Amadeo, carry a weight that extends beyond the succession dispute. They are the only young male-line members of the entire House of Savoy on either side of the dynastic divide. Emanuele Filiberto has 2 daughters and has declared that the eldest, Vittoria, will succeed him. If the Aosta claim is correct, the dynasty's male-line survival depends on a 17-year-old and a 15-year-old living in Milan. The dispute has split even the immediate family. Vittorio Emanuele's own sister, Princess Maria Gabriella, publicly sided with the Aosta branch. She stated that her brother was not a good representative of the dynasty. She attended Aosta family events. She supported their claim in interviews. A daughter of Umberto II, publicly repudiating her brother's right to lead the family their father had led. The fracture ran through the bloodline itself. Italian courts have consistently declined to issue a definitive ruling on the matter, treating the question of dynastic headship as a private family affair in a republic that does not legally recognize noble titles. The constitution that expelled the Savoys also rendered their internal hierarchy legally meaningless. 2 men claim to lead a house that rules nothing in a country whose foundational law declares the republican form of government irrevocable. At Vittorio Emanuele's funeral in Turin Cathedral on the 10th of February 2024, photographers captured Aimone helping to carry his rival's coffin. The 2 families sat together. Aimone and Emanuele Filiberto embraced. Whatever the House Law of 1780 says, whatever the constitutional lawyers argue, whatever the Consulta dei Senatori del Regno, the monarchist advisory body, has ruled in non-binding opinions, the photograph from that funeral is the closest the House of Savoy has come to unity since Umberto II walked across the tarmac at Ciampino. The crown jewels of Italy sit in a vault at the Bank of Italy headquarters on Via Nazionale in Rome, protected by 11 seals in the same leather case Falcone Lucifero carried down the steps of the Quirinal Palace on the 10th of June 1946. 26 pieces, 6,732 diamonds totaling approximately 2,000 carats, over 2,000 pearls, sapphires, emeralds, rubies. The collection includes Queen Margherita's Savoy knot tiara, a diamond bow brooch set with 768 diamonds anchored by a large pink diamond, and a Riviere necklace of graduated brilliance. The estimated value is €300 million. The Bank of Italy maintains the jewels have never been officially appraised. When the jeweller Giovanni Bulgari was permitted to inspect them during the sole opening of the vault in 1976, he described them as worth only a few $100,000 and remarked that Italy had always had a poor crown. The family disputes that assessment. In 2021, the surviving heirs of Umberto II formally declared ownership of the jewels and demanded their return. Emanuele Filiberto and his 3 surviving aunts, Maria Pia, Maria Gabriella, and Maria Beatrice, argued that the jewels were personal property of the Savoy family, not endowments of the Italian crown, and that the confiscation provision of the 13th transitional provision did not cover personal possessions deposited voluntarily at the Bank of Italy. When a mediation process involving the bank and the Prime Minister's office failed in 2022, the family filed suit in Rome's civil court. In May 2025, Judge Mario Tanferna rejected the claim. The ruling held that the jewels were state property, endowments of the crown acquired with funds from the state treasury across multiple reigns, not the personal effects of any individual king. The sealed note Umberto left to those who have the right was deemed insufficient to establish private ownership. The family announced plans to appeal to the European Court of Human Rights. The dispute fractured the family along the same line that had already divided it. Prince Emanuele publicly stated that the jewels belonged to the crown and should remain with the state, directly contradicting Emanuele Filiberto's legal claim. The family's lawyer responded that Emanuele Filiberto and his aunts were stunned by their cousin's intervention. A dynasty that cannot agree on who leads it cannot agree on who owns its diamonds either. 3 of Umberto II's 4 daughters are still alive. Maria Pia is 91, dividing her time between Paris and Palm Beach. Maria Gabriella is 86, in Switzerland. Maria Beatrice is 83. Emanuele Filiberto, 53, divides his time between Los Angeles and Europe, managing football clubs, a video game company, a pasta restaurant, the Dynastic Orders of the House of Savoy, which distributed over €636,000 in charitable funds in 2024 and 2025, and the ongoing campaign to repatriate his grandfather's remains from Haute-Combe Abbey to the Pantheon in Rome. The Republic has not granted that request. His daughter Vittoria, 22 years old, the designated heir who would be the first woman to lead the House of Savoy in over 1,000 years, is building a modelling career. Across Milan, Prince Iman commutes to Pirelli headquarters, raises 3 children, and maintains what many genealogists consider the stronger dynastic claim with considerably less public attention. His son, Umberto, 17 years old, carries the name of the last king. The Quirinal Palace, 110,500 square metres, 1,200 rooms, houses the President of the Italian Republic. The Royal Palace of Turin charges €12 for admission. The Palace of Venaria Reale receives over 1 million visitors per year. The Stupinigi hunting lodge displays furniture behind velvet ropes. The 22 Savoy residences inscribed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site generated tens of millions of euros in tourism revenue last year for a republic that constitutionally forbade the family that built them from entering the country for more than half a century. Article 139 of the Italian Constitution states that the republican form of government shall not be subject to constitutional amendment. A 2018 poll found that 15% of Italians favoured a royalist political party. 8% supported Emanuele Filiberto as king. The House of Savoy unified Italy on the 17th of March, 1861. It handed Italy to Mussolini on the 29th of October, 1922. It signed the racial laws on the 17th of November, 1938. It fled Rome on the 9th of September, 1943. Italy lost on the 2nd of June, 1946. It was erased from Italian soil on the 1st of January, 1948. It returned on the 23rd of December, 2002. It has spent every year since arguing over who leads it, who owns its jewels, and what it means to be royal in a republic that doesn't recognise the word. The diamonds remain in the vault, the seals remain unbroken, the note remains inside. And a 22-year-old named Vittoria di Savoia, great-great-great-granddaughter of the man who made Italy a kingdom, carries the name of a dynasty that ruled for 943 years into a century that has no use for what it ruled.